Well, hello, it's JK Joseph with the Mosquito Creek Lumber Company On30 Swamp Log and Railroad that you see behind me. It's our YouTube channel, and for everybody that's been subscribing and following along and watching the videos, really appreciate that. Want to say first off, Merry Christmas and Happy New Year. Lots of new things are in the works for 2022 with the Mosquito Creek Lumber Company layout. Mentioned it real quick in the last video, expansion. That's probably where I'll leave it until we spill the beans in the next video or two. But it's going to be very exciting, and it's the reason why it's taken so long to get videos out, because my wife Kim and I have been really busy with this next phase in our lives, and it's pretty exciting. So, and it means something new for the Mosquito Creek Lumber Company. So be sure to keep subscribing, keep watching, get the notification bell going, and we will have more videos to come. So with that said, we are in the process of building ourselves a landing craft model, a 1/48 scale Hobby Boss LCM. And this one is a transport barge 112 for the Mosquito Creek Lumber Company. Now, if you notice something a little bit different, I ended up thinking, there's something missing on this boat. And what goes on the Navy boats and most merchant marines, it is that anti-fouling red paint. Keeps all the sea-like critters from grabbing on and creating drag. And I thought, this needs a little red. So I'll show you here. I used acrylic paint and sprayed it on, masked it off and sprayed it on. And we're ready to continue on with weathering this model and getting ready to put it on the layout. I know I've said that a million times, but this has been a fun project for me, and we'll get going on it right now. So like I said, before we got started, I decided to paint the red anti-fouling color on the hull. And to do that, I took some Tamiya masking tape, really good stuff, measured it out, laid it down as straight as I possibly could, pushed that down, and then added some blue painter's tape to it. I used a pencil eraser to burnish down the edges so there wouldn't be any paint that would sneak through. And then after that was all masked, then I kind of covered the model as much as I could with some paper towels and some other masking tape. I used some country red craft paint, acrylic craft paint, and then I also added a few drops of the Tamiya retarder to slow down the drying of those paints, since they tend to dry pretty quickly. And then I airbrushed that anti-fouling on the bottom of the hull, let it dry, and they were ready to go with our weathering. All right, we have our LCM model here, and what I'm going to do first is fade out this paint a little bit. It's a little bit too dark and new for having been through World War II, the Korean War, or what have you, and then ending up in the swamp on the Mosquito Creek Lumber Company. So I'm going to take my color that I had used for painting the base of the LCM, and I'm going to take some XF19, the sky gray, and lighten this color up, and then do a very light overspray on that. Kind of tone down the paint, make it look a little bit sun faded, and then after that, then we'll start adding some rust and scratches and oil stains and things like that. As you can see, it's quite a bit lighter than the original paint on there. So, that said, let's give it a go. With the overspray done and the LCM looking pretty weathered just as it is, it was time to really add some character, that seagoing look with some rust and some filters, some washes, and some good rusty scratches. A lot of modelers use turpentine or a paint thinner and oil colors. I have the acrylic paints out, and water is usually a pretty easily accessible commodity, and it doesn't have the fumes or anything like that. The drying times are really fast, which I like. So with that said, I use a mixture of regular distilled water and 70% isopropyl alcohol for my thinner, and then I use basic paints like the acrylic craft paints in a burnt umber, burnt sienna, and then I'll also use some of the powdered chalks, as we'll see later. So what I do is I take my thinner mixture, the water and isopropyl alcohol, wet the surface, and then go back in with my color, and then that way you're not getting the brush strokes. It's kind of, it fades it out, it softens the edges, and you can always go back in there with a little bit more of the thinner. And I noticed that with the isopropyl alcohol, it dries, it gives it another faded kind of look as well. So it was kind of a happy accident. I didn't expect that, but I think it looks really, really good. So I continued to do that throughout the entire model, using these washes with the acrylic rust colors, and then went over that again with a little bit more of that thinner to feather out the edges. All right, so we're going to do some scratches. I'm going to show you how I put some minor scratches along the hull of our LCM, and that can be also done inside the cargo bag, since equipment and materials are coming in and out of there, and it's a pretty tight squeeze. It's around 10 feet or something like that, just barely enough to get a Sherman tank squeezed down in there. The capacity for these Higgins LCMs, the 3 model, was around 60,000 pounds, or 1 Sherman tank. And let's try to do some more scratches. I'll show you how I do it. You can use something with a sharp point, like an X-Acto blade or hobby knife, or just a regular toothpick. What I'm using here is just regular craft paint, dark burnt umber, and there's plenty in the cap, so just grab a little bit on the tip of the toothpick and then just draw a nice thin line across there with the point of your toothpick. So there is a little scratch there, and being close to water all the time, things rust, and this is a really wet area of the LCM. So what I'm going to do is take a brush before this dries and just draw down some of the rust streaks coming off of that scratch. And they don't have to be real huge or in regular patterns or anything. Scratches, as you'll know by looking on the side of your vehicles, are always kind of hit or miss. So just do that a couple places like that. And just draw down the paintbrush just slightly on that wet paint. Now inside, you can see I've kind of used some of these Bragdon weathering powders. A little bit goes a long way. I've had these for years, and this bright oxide color is fresh rust. And with the fresh rust, we'll just take a little powder on our brush, and because moisture and things is going to accumulate down in the cracks inside here, we'll just put a little bit down in the corner. I'll finish this off. Just a little bit of fresh rust to kind of give it a little bit of a difference in the age of the rust. The old rust is dark colors, the brand new stuff is lighter and a little bit more bright. Got a little bit more down here. Change hands so you can maybe see this just a little bit. And like anything with weathering, a little bit goes a long way. It's better to just underdo it than overdo it, I think. So there we go. Another weathering product that you can use, add to your stable of paints and things, is Panaline Accent Color. Comes in brown, and this one's in black, and it's a thin wash, and it has a very small point brush included. Let's see if you can see that. So this is thinned down quite a bit and is ready to give some accents around the crevices and things there. So I've found that if you just take a little bit of water, we'll do this panel in here. Just add just a slight bit of water first, and then your Panaline accents, just it'll help the wash travel, spread out a little bit. And what that does is kind of gives a little bit of shadow detail, kind of brings out things. Also kind of will look like oil or grime. And if that's a little too strong for you, you can come back in with your wet brush with the clean water on it and just kind of dilute it a little bit more, and then when it dries up, it'll look pretty good. Streak it down. All right, now we're going to be doing the long-awaited canvas top for the wheelhouse. And what's going to be involved here is what we've got. Got a piece of glass out of a, I think this is a 4x6 frame. And these are really good. And if you have some old frames, they're good for cutting on, mixing paint, and also good for this particular project. Also have a scale ruler. I have a piece of Kleenex tissue paper, facial tissue, and it doesn't have any designs on it. On the edge it's got some, but we're not going to use that. What else? Paintbrush, scissors, and some Vallejo paints. I've got khaki, I've got a model wash in a dark green, and some thinned Model Air paint in a olive drab, and then also a razor blade to help pick up. What we're going to be doing is measuring this, cutting the tissue and laying it out here, soaking it with paint, and then transferring it onto the framework here of the wheelhouse. Okay, so it takes measurements here in O scale. We're looking at, let's see, with the lights on this ruler, I can't really see, 6 foot by roughly 8 feet. So 6 by 8. So I'm going to take my tissue here and just roughly measure out 6 by 8, and then we'll cut that tissue out. All right, so we have our piece cut out. I also cut out another piece, 2 pieces actually, and these will end up being tarps that will be rolled up along the side of the wheelhouse for rain protection. Set those over here, and then I have 2 pieces of fine wire that we'll use to as the center core for wrapping those pieces of tissue. Now I've got my khaki paint. What I'm going to do is pretty much just drizzle it right on top of the tissue and start to soak this piece of facial tissue with the paint. And what this ends up doing is when it dries, it hardens up the tissue and makes it pretty sturdy. Flip it over and then soak this side too. Double thickness, which should be pretty good. There we go. Try to be gentle when you're doing this so you don't tear the tissue. It starts to get pretty fragile once it's totally soaked with the paint. All right. Then what we'll do is get our paints out of here for a second. And bring our LCM in. Going to pick this up using the razor blade, getting both of the plies, and then throwing this right on top of the framework. I'll try to overlap it a little bit here, which helps it stick to itself. And then pull it around underneath. Then we'll come in here and push it down in between the supports. And at this point, I'm going to take some of this other color to use as kind of a shading. Kind of get a little bit, some different definition in here. Kind of make it look shadowed in there, and then where the supports are will be more highlighted. Okay, for the tarps, I got them saturated with the paint. I just cut my fingernails and I can't do anything with them. So we'll
pick up this one tarp and our wire, which is cut a little bit longer than the width of the tarp.
And as I'm rolling up this tarp, I'm wetting my fingers to keep my fingers from sticking to the wet tissue paper. You can also see that at this point I've already added all the detailed parts to the LCM, including some planks and pieces of board, some large oil drums, some fuel cans and crates and things like that. The tarps will go up alongside each of the wheelhouse's frames as kind of a weather protection for the boat pilot or the skipper to keep them dry during inclement weather. And with that, the project's pretty much done. Now, if you will, enjoy these pictures of the finished model. And we appreciate you watching this video series, 4 parts, and thanks for hanging out. Hope you'll try to incorporate some 1/48th scale models onto your O-scale layout. They're awesome. They're fun to build. Kind of gives you a little diversion from actually, working on boxcars and locomotives and track and things like that. And it helps your scenery look really, really cool. I'm enjoying using 1/48th scale models, ex-military things, especially with my 1950s, early 1950s era for the Mosquito Creek Lumber Company. Again, thanks for watching. Thanks for liking this video. Thanks for subscribing to the channel. And again, more interesting stuff coming your way during 2022, including some really big news about the Mosquito Creek Lumber Company On30 layout. In the meantime, wishing you and yours all the best in this coming new year. And again, thanks for watching Mosquito Creek Lumber Company's YouTube channel.